Joining us on the program are not one, but two gentlemen, the first of which is the co-writer and director of Camera Obscura and the upcoming horror western feature, The Pale Door. He has many feature film credits to his name, a man with a lot of opinions and not a lot of patience, the founder of Paper Street Pictures, a guy I've known longer than some of you have been alive. He is Aaron B. Koontz, and we are also joined by Cameron Burns.
Thank you for that beautiful intro, John.
Oh my God, that made me so happy. Like I was like holding my mouth, trying not to laugh in the middle. But okay, yeah, thank you.
Cam's done some of that stuff too.
No, Cam. So in all honesty, Cam is actually a very, very integral part to everything that's going on. I give him a lot of shit, but I give him shit from perspective of love. I hope, at least, usually. And but yeah, we would not have some of the recent success we've had if it wasn't for Cam. So I'll say that.
Yeah, Sean.
Well, that's why we can make fun, because you can handle.
Sean, so real quick, so I know I'm sure your intro, you did a very eloquent and lovely piece talking about what's going on right now. And, I'm doing this in every podcast and every time that we're asked to talk because, look, it's not like we have any kind of big platform, but for whatever reason, people are asking me to talk to them. So if they are, the first words out of my mouth I want them to really hear are Black Lives Matter and defund the police. And I think those are two things that we need to, they're not political. This is not a political podcast, but this isn't a political statement. It's a statement about humans and it's an opportunity for us. And right now, if you're not a part of that opportunity and you're not actively trying to change the system and actively looking for ways to make things better and listening to these people, you are part of the problem and we do not support you. So you want us to make movies with you. You want us to be involved in what you're doing, show that you're a part of the solution and that you're listening because there's a lot of other people watching right now as well. So be a positive part of that. That's it. That's my take.
And we're also joined by Cameron Burns,
who seconds what Aaron said.
No, I know you guys do. And no, we had to, as we said, not necessarily the voice for that, and this isn't even the podcast for it. We hope it's an escape for people, if anything. But yes, what Aaron said, wholeheartedly.
And that's a great parlay into why we made Scare Package anyway, because it was an escape from frustrations we had in the industry. So maybe, hopefully, it can be a little escape for people as well during this, because it's just meant to be fun. And I hope that we but every escape still has to come back to reality. So it doesn't, be a part of that reality when you come back as well.
No, agreed. Then we have you guys on to talk about Scare Package, of course, but before we actually dive into the film itself, we kind of want to hear from you about something that's been a topic on the show a lot lately, which is the changing look of what film festivals are. And ahead of the film's release on Shudder, June 18th, it played at the Chattanooga Film Festival. One, how was that experience, the screening, the Q&A, the reception to the movie in general?
It was great. It was great. The reception was amazing. Right now, I will say, like, I'm crying every day. And then one of the ways that I deal with these sad feelings that I have is I'll go on Twitter and I search Scare Package and I see so many people saying amazing things. And it's great. And Sean, as I share in our group chats and stuff as well, just, these things that pop out and these people that are connecting with the film, it's the best feeling in the world, because you have these weird ideas and you just hope, you're just praying that someone out there is going to connect with it, that someone is going to find it fun or in this moment, like we said, escapism for them. And they are, and that's the best. And so I'm really excited for June 18th and more people to have that. And Chattanooga, gave us that opportunity, which was so great and a wonderful experience.
Yeah, Chattanooga, I thought they did a wonderful job. They were kind of the guinea pig on all this, but they did a really good job of kind of bridging the gap between a normal film festival and the camaraderie and the community that comes with that, and something that's more online and that's harder to do. But they did a really good job of still keeping that with, the Twitter community and special events timed to specific times. So it's kind of like a one-off thing. It really worked. Obviously it's never going to be preferred to a live festival with actual people and stuff like that. But I had an amazing time. It was a great 4 days. And why anybody would be opposed to something like that is crazy. I think it was $30. I got to watch like 10 features and like 30 short films. So, all in all, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I participated too in that $30 badge because, like you said, it's an amazing deal. And really all you do have to watch is a couple movies and it's already paid for itself. And not to mention all the great shorts and the Q&As and panels that you had access to, as well as just supporting the arts during this time, which really, really need our love right now. So it was an awesome opportunity. I'm really glad to hear that from a filmmaker's perspective. I watched it as a moviegoer more than a filmmaker. I'm glad to hear that was also a rewarding experience. And I was thinking as Aaron was talking about scrolling through the Twitter feed for a sense of, joy, you made a good film when scrolling through Twitter, looking at hashtags or comments about your movie is a positive experience. So congratulations on making a film that people are really resonating with. And were you able to kind of get that sense from the Chattanooga community itself? It's so different than, being at a premiere and hearing the crowd react, of course, but kind of what was the equivalent of that in a virtual context?
Well, so I think one of the most proud things that happened for me in 2020 is I started the chat hashtag, and it caught on. So I took
that was you?
Well, yeah. So it was, who first? I think it was Jill Gebergazian. I replied to somebody saying, hey, we should watch these together. And then Jill was the organizer. She was the catalyst. And then we were replying, and I said, what do we do? Do we create a thing? I said, do we just call it? I made a joke, and I was like, chat. And then it caught on. And then the festival's using it, and then everybody was using it. And I was like, oh my God, I started something. So that's so silly, but weirdly, it was fun. So we had these group watches, and, we'd go through and we watched. I mean, the Dorches just put such a great job, and Josh Goldblum and the whole team that they have now put together such a wonderful lineup. And yeah, we got to watch with people and comment. And I was texting some folks at the same time as well. And, because there was a group of us that were all going to go to Chattanooga together. Mickey Reese, who made Climate of the Hunter, who's a dear friend. And then Danielle Pleger, who's in The Pale Door, and she's also got a bigger part in his movie. And then Max Nalvensky, he had a short that was there as well, and Zach Lampaw, who did The Vice Guide to Bigfoot. So we had a bunch of friends, and we were all going to Chattanooga. We were all going to hang out. We talked about getting a house together and all this stuff too. So it was sad to not have that happen. So instead we started these little chats, and they took off. And
yeah,
it was so much fun.
I think the chat hashtag was a big part of the success of the festival for me. I mean, obviously, it would have been great even without all the community stuff. It was still a lot of movies in a short amount of time, great movies for, an inexpensive price, so you can't really beat that. But the chat hashtag on Twitter really brought that community that is the best thing about film festivals, that community group watch and discussion afterwards, and all of what makes festivals truly special. That hashtag and just the Twitter, universe really made the festival work above and beyond just, hey, look, there's some cool movies here.
And a lot of that too, that really stems from just Chris Dorsch in particular, and he's such a loving person. Like this is a guy who, when the Taylor Swift documentary came out, him and I were on Twitter talking about how we were both crying watching the Taylor Swift documentary. So it's just, he's one of these people who's just kind of in tap with everything that's going on in his emotions, and he's like listening, and him and I have just always had these good conversations, and he comes from a place of heart. Like he loves movies so much, and he puts everything. I mean, he got really sick right before the festival started too, because he just wears himself out, and that's something that I know and relate to really well. And so it starts at the top there. And what they did in 6 weeks, they did this in 6 weeks. They relocated the festival. The festival came out of Atlanta. I don't think a lot of people know that. They went to a studio in Atlanta. Tim Reese, who played Beelzebub and all that, like they created this whole environment, this whole set that they did. They did these live, talks and everything. It added. They could have just put something on a platform and said this was it, but they didn't. They did everything they could to create a communal experience, and they will be used as the mechanism for how to do this from a enjoyment standard going forward. Now, there are still other questions about the logistics of that, and I'm happy to talk about that too, but from a pure enjoyment, how we're going to organize this, getting people watching the movies, the hashtags, the social engagement, all of that was phenomenal. And it was a weekend that I think a lot of people really needed, and was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think it captured the spirit of a film festival in digital form so well, and I'm looking forward to see how other festivals maybe learn from it over the coming months and through the end of the year, as it's looking more and more doubtful that some of those fests that push back their dates are going to happen. I hope so, but I see that being unlikely. So hopefully the good news is that it can hold Chattanooga up as a great example of a fest that did a lot of things right, as well as, maybe learning from some of the challenges as well that they faced. I know from a technical perspective, there were probably some learnings, but, I can't believe how quickly they were able to put it together and execute something that was so meaningful to a lot of people.
Well, and I think, too, that it allowed other festivals to hopefully look at this and go, oh, maybe this is possible. We were kind of skeptical, but they did a good job with this. It's not going to be exactly the same, but maybe we can have our festival online for a year if we have to do that. Hopefully more festivals see that and understand that and hopefully skew that direction.
Yeah, it's still going to be really, really tricky, though. Look, we have the Pale Door releasing in August, and that's because we would release later if we really thought that there was going to be these festival experiences to have. So we had to make an educated call on that and decided to release the film earlier because of those reasons. So, and we would have gotten in and were given notice that we would have gotten into a lot of festivals, which was really exciting, and it's kind of, selfishly, to say it's a little heartbreaking, that we didn't get in to be able to play those that we always dreamed of playing. But there's still this really great situation that we can kind of, get behind if, enough people are willing to still embrace some of the logistics of what they did, like how they had to have the security that was done, what they did with Microsoft. And then I think it was MediaServe. I can't remember the other company that worked with them. There was a lot of detail put into how to try and make this as secure as possible. And, look, the movie we've checked, and Scare Package has not ended up on torrent sites after this. So when you talk about the success of the festival, that was the one thing I was waiting on. Was, okay, are these movies getting leaked? Because they still could have. And it doesn't look like, I haven't heard that there was any kind of inundation there. And I think that's a testament to, having the right situation. But then the larger festivals you get and the more people you bring in and the bigger movies that you play, the likelihood of that continues to go up. So that's still a hurdle that has not been figured out. And then I can also say firsthand, our distributor on Pale Door will not allow, online festivals right now. So, and I understand it. I understand why. So that's part of this kind of give and take that's going to be happening. So I still think there's a great opportunity. I think there's ways to do portions of the festival online. Even when we're past, we have, a vaccine and we're in a much better space there. I still think we're probably seeing there might be a virtual aspect of the festivals that'll still exist. And there could be like a few features that are available or something, depending upon what those distributors allow, because the word of mouth that you get when you're part of that, the virtual side, I think is really great. I mean, the amount of people that talked about Scare Package after, and I've talked with other filmmakers too, the exposure was great this week. It was really, really great. And that's directly from that festival.
Right. You got to think that more human beings put eyes on the movies than would have filled the few theaters that ran it at any size festival that they were trying to do in person.
They were. And I don't think I can talk about the numbers, but I've heard of numbers that have come out, and they're significantly larger than the 400, 500 people that would have seen your movie at a festival traditionally.
Right, so it sounds like a lot of positive news, at least for Scare Package coming out of it, and for the future of festivals, hopefully, that they will continue to keep making tweaks to make it as close as they can to the in-person experience. So let's, if you don't mind segueing, we'll deep dive into the movie, as this, one of the mission statements of this podcast was not only to talk about genre film and filmmaking, but to kind of dive into aspects of production. And I'm certain you and Cameron are going to be answering a lot of similar questions on other podcasts, so maybe we'll take the angle of some of the different sides of how this anthology came together. I know Becky's got a few questions for you as well.
Great, let's do it.
Yeah, so you mentioned Pale Door coming out in August, and Scare Package is just now coming out in June. I'm sure it wasn't anticipated that these films would be coming out so close together, but just to kind of give us all some perspective, how long ago did you start working on Scare Package?
God, this was, Cam, you might have help with my dates, because I know, so right after Camera Obscura, that came out in June of 2017, and that was a very difficult experience for us making that movie for a variety of reasons, and we just wanted to make something small with our friends and kind of do it our way. We were like, hey, we think that we can make this happen. We just need to scrap together the money and do it. So that would have been, July, August or so, and then I think our first segment, Cam, was that the end of 2017 or was that 2018?
I think October 2017 was when we kind of decided to kind of go through with it and do it. We kind of had like the base idea and started going out to people. I think the first segment shot right around the first of the year, I believe, of 2018.
So that's a great example of kind of the long road it can be for indie films, right? Especially with something as complicated as an anthology film. So wanted to dive in a bit more about the origins. So when you were starting bouncing around ideas in late 2017, what was the origin of that both creatively? And it sounds like there was some motivation too as well in terms of just kind of wanting to get back to, the reason you loved making movies to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, so Cameron had been pitching, for a while for us to do an anthology. Like we just knew so many great people that we wanted to work with. And this would be a quick way for us to just kind of work with a lot of people we loved and or admired. Maybe we didn't even know as well, but we admired their work. So that was an interesting challenge. And I liked that from a 10,000 feet point of view. But the problem was I didn't want to do an anthology because there just were too many great examples. I think Southbound and VHS2 and as modern anthologies as they've come back are some of the best that have ever been made. So why are we trying to tackle something like that that's already been done? But then Cam, being as Cam is, kept bringing it up. And to his credit, he's like, hey, like really think about this. There's ways we can do this. And we knew we could do it inexpensively. So that's part of the appeal as well. So I spent a weekend and very OCD wise, like created a little spreadsheet. I wish I could find the spreadsheet. I've talked about it a number of times. I really wish I could find it because I'm not kidding. Like this is not hyperbole. Like I put movies on a grid and I listed like how long each segment was, how long the credits were, what my highs and lows of each ones were. And I mean, I did this over, multiple days. My girlfriend at the time was furious because, it's like, you're not doing anything for 4 days. And I did this and I came to the conclusion that there was an opportunity, and that opportunity existed with them all being comedies, because I ended up finding out that my favorites were always the horror comedies. I mean, my favorite of all time is Safe Haven from VHS2. Truly, that is my favorite short segment in any anthology.
That is not a comedy.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a comedy.
Very much not a comedy.
But outside of that, I really gravitated toward those a lot, it seemed. And then we knew Chris McEnroy. And what Chris McEnroy does so well with his gore comedy mixes was just something that was like, that's what this could be. And then kind of came up with the idea of tropes. Every segment is a different trope. So it had to have a through line, had to have, a concept that made sense, that, each of the segments would be tied together in that way, had to be horror comedy, and then had to be commenting on anthologies. And we really wanted to push the meta aspects, the self-referential aspects, and then there had to be cohesion. So I talked with Adam Mortimer, who was he did Daniel Isn't Real, which is amazing, but he also was a producer and one of the guys that helped get Holidays put together, that anthology. I talked with him for a while about what he did. I reached out to Brad Miska and some others who worked on VHS and asked some information from them and just kind of like, hey, so what were the highs and lows and, what are ways to do this? And creating a cohesive piece of this by every segment had the same composer, had the same sound designer, we had the same colorist, and we kind of customized a system based on what I had heard from all these other anthologies and what I had seen that we thought could do something unique.
I think we knew there were two calls we absolutely had to make. We had to get Chris McEnroy involved for reasons Aaron already kind of discussed. He wrote the book on this exact kind of horror short. And then we knew Jeremy King, who we'd worked with a million other times on other things. We just knew how funny he was, and we just knew he would be so great if we could build the wraparound around him and his kind of comedy. And so they were kind of the first two people that came to mind, and luckily we were able to get both, and they both just kill it.
I would say also Ryan Spindell too. Even though Ryan couldn't actually do one, Ryan developed an idea with us. He's a wonderful filmmaker. He made a short film called The Babysitter Murders, which is one of my favorite shorts ever as well. I mean, it's up there. It's up there. But Ryan he pitched us an idea, and it was a little too more straight horror. We wanted to do a little more comedy. And then we developed one that we fell in love with. We were so excited to do. But then his feature, The Mortuary Collection, which everybody should go see. We actually just played at a drive-in with The Mortuary Collection last weekend in Fort Lauderdale. And it sold out. It was amazing. Or at least I heard. I obviously couldn't be there, sadly. But Ryan, the segment that he pitched us is now actually the opening segment of The Mortuary Collection. So it's which is great because it's a great segment and it's so amazing, but it just didn't quite fit. But Ryan was also somebody that right off the bat, we just knew some people that we wanted that like got this and understood the world we were talking about. And, Ryan and Chris were the first two, and then we kind of went off from there.
Okay. And so then it sounds like there's a few key pieces that really helped you build kind of the anthology around those ideas, those concepts, or particular filmmakers that you were working with, or actors in some cases. So how did you go about approaching a variety of other filmmakers and get them on board with the idea? And, how much did you let them kind of just run with it and come back with crazy ideas? Or did you, present them some concepts of what you already had so that there was like a certain amount of cohesiveness across them?
I mean, I think the only rules were really that they had to do a horror trope and kind of be able to explain to us what trope they wanted to explore. And then, it needed to be comedic in some way. And what's great about comedy is there's so many different variations of comedy. It doesn't have to be over the top. Like our segment and like McEnroy's are a little more of that. But then like Baron Vaughn's, I think, is hilarious in a very unique way, in the kind of the stuff that he's talking about and what's going on. So I think or even Courtney and Hillary Anhar's segment, I think, is hilarious. But that's if you really know giallo films and you follow that, you can see where that comedy kind of comes into play. And you just have to find this balance. So we wanted them to find that for us and kind of pitch us on what they wanted. We were pitched a number of projects. Like I just mentioned, there was one from Ryan that we even passed on, but there were a number of projects by a number of people that we ended up passing on because we're like, no, this doesn't feel. We had one that was a great idea. If somebody pitched something, we're like, no, that's too similar to something we already have. So we don't want to tackle that trope again. We got to go a different direction.
We didn't want to handcuff anybody. We wanted them to be kind of as creative as possible, but we did let them know kind of what we were looking for and the kind of thing we were looking for. And then, as they pitched stuff, we definitely worked with them. It's like, hey, this might work, but what if we did this? Or this might work, but we got to add more comedy here. And, we just kind of developed stuff with people. And sometimes, stuff just didn't work out and wasn't the kind of the right feel. And then other times we were able, like the segments Aaron talked about earlier, we were able to, work through and make it work. But we wanted it to be as collaborative as possible. We didn't want to tell anybody what to do. We picked them for a reason. So we wanted to bring their creativity, but then we worked with them to try to kind of fit it into the scare package box.
Right, and one of the things I also appreciate about Scare Package, and I'm just thinking about the process of all the different filmmakers maybe you've worked with over the years and kind of assembling your team, is you do have a pretty inclusive set of directors, whereas a lot of other anthologies are pretty much directed by a lot of white dudes. And I love that the idea of an anthology can bring in different ideas together. So I'm curious how much of that was, maybe part of your goal, or did you think about diversity and inclusiveness as you were, assembling the group of filmmakers to work with?
Yes, absolutely. It was very important. And I think when Noah Segan actually pitched me for him to be a part of it. And then when Noah and I talked about it, and I thought that was great because I knew he wanted to direct. So this was like he was trying to get a feature off the ground. So this was a great way for him to kind of, dip his toes a little bit into directing on a smaller scale first. But then we had a lot of discussions about how this was an opportunity for us to hire the people that we wanted to hire and to give. Like, we don't have to answer to anyone. We could give anybody the opportunity that we wanted to give. And like we said, we already knew some folks who were established and had been making shorts, and we had seen these multiple times, and we knew what we would get. So they kind of fit that and immediately kind of got slotted in. But then we have the power, so we should use it. So we had an active effort. We sought out, we contacted, everyone. I talked with everyone we could find, like, hey, give me all the directors you can. There's a number of other persons of color and female directors that we also talked to, but for timing reasons didn't work out. We had to trade some around. We were so close to working with Laura Moss, who's amazing. Like, I can't wait for people to see what her feature is going to be. She's making a Frankenstein movie, and she's phenomenal out of New York. And, but like the timing of that didn't work. And so there were just situations like that kind of popped up. But we said, look, we have to try and find other voices. Like, that was important for us to do. And, but it was going to be about who can make the right version, too. There were some other folks that we liked, but we didn't see anything or their pitches were not anything that we thought really fit, that were the right kind of fit for this. So it was be the right fit, but then also hopefully find folks who can express this and talk about this in different ways. And, we were glad to be able to do that to, the little amount we could.
Yeah, I think one of the things we found out pretty early was it's harder than you think to find people who can really do comedy. There's a lot of people out there that can, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that can do comedy, but there's a lot of people out there on the genre festival circuit and working in genre that can do horror. But when you really need it to be comedy, and not even just like a little bit of comedy, but actually actively taking on tropes and actively, kind of goofing on that stuff, it's difficult, not just because there are tons of great directors out there, but they just didn't have that flair for comedy, or they don't have that flair for comedy. And so it was really difficult to find people that did. And so, yeah, we were ecstatic with the group that we got. But it was definitely, that was kind of the sticking point as we were, moving forward. You'd be like, this person's great. Then you have a pitch with them or whatever. And you're like, yeah, they're good, but it's just not comedy. So like a lot came back to finding people who had that similar vision, that similar willingness to kind of get goofy and really push the comedy.
Yeah, horror comedy is definitely a tricky combo. It's kind of like the salty sweet. Like when you get it right, it's amazing and it goes together beautifully. But then when you get it wrong, it's like, oh, it's too salty now, and now it's too sweet, and they're not complementing each other right. So it's definitely a balance.
Yeah, and I think that's what we kind of found was like, it's really hard to say, hey, this person is an amazing horror director, let's just get them and we'll figure the comedy out. And like pretty early on, we realized, maybe it's not quite as simple as that. We really need to find people who have the comic chops, because that's not easy.
And keep in mind too, it wasn't even necessarily that we had to see that they had directed or made a comedy before. We just wanted to see what their pitch was. And if the pitch made us laugh, or we were like, oh, that's funny, and it doesn't need to be outwardly laughing. It could just be like, like a chuckle, like I get it. Like that's a really clever statement about horror that you're doing there. And we really leaned into those opportunities. So it was just, we gave them, we cast a wide net. And I mean, it's weird. We say that it was hard, but then we also have so many other directors that we wanted to work with that we couldn't. So it's like a weird balance and how that ended up working out. Because the timing, look, we talked to a lot of talented people. And when you work with talented people they're in use. So we were juggling schedules constantly on this. And that was probably one of the bigger challenges on the film, was just juggling everybody's insane schedule.
It's also one of the reasons, we started in 2017 and it's just now coming out, just because you're really making, 7-8 short films. So it can be difficult to schedule and manage that.
Across 3 states, no less, over 16-month period, I think. A couple did even overlap from different states.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crazy. And Aaron, you mentioned something earlier about, being able to put together the group you wanted to work with because you didn't have to answer to anyone. So was Scare Package completely financed independently? And can you talk a little bit about that process of financing it if it wasn't, independently through just self-financing?
Yeah, it was all just asking our friends and people that we knew to invest in the movie, So we had, people had known us for a long time. We had a good reputation in town. There were a lot of people who had already offered. They're like, hey, if you want to make something, we want to help you. So we had just wonderful partners. I mean, look, even one of our investors, Dan McGahee, his son Logan was in one of the first things we ever made. And, we loved them, and he's always been so supportive and always wanted to help, and he offered to help and invest in the movie. So we had a lot of great folks like that gave us those opportunities. And then I personally put a lot of money in. We went to anyone and everyone we could find. So it was all completely privately financed. There was no company or anything that came in other than our company to make that happen. And that was something that we kept to. We did not pitch this movie to a single company to get made. We just said, we're going to raise the money. We're going to do it ourselves, 100% Paper Street. And that's why it was able to be a reflection of what we wanted to make. And so we had to answer to no one. And that's a really liberating feeling. It's really rare in film to have that. And although actually we did it on The Pale Door as well. But that's a different story altogether. But yeah, it was all privately financed, every dollar.
Right. And then when you're putting together, as you mentioned, stories across multiple different states with multiple different casts and crews, a lot can go wrong and a lot can go right. And I imagine that in some cases, the dollar stretched farther than others in certain locations. Did you find it a strength that you were working with multiple filmmakers who could maybe kind of leverage their own connections or maybe even chip in some of their own dollars, to contribute to their portion of the film?
Well, I think you kind of nailed it there, which is, it's really hard to make a full feature film and call in favors. It's like, hey, buddy, who I know who's a great cinematographer, can I borrow you for almost no money for 40 days? The answer to that is going to be no. But when you're shooting these shorts with different directors, somebody like, Noah Segan, just for example, who has tons of contacts, who's been in the industry forever, it's much easier to say, hey, I'm shooting something for 2 days. Can you come help out? And so every director, because of that setup, because it was only shooting a day or two, we're only getting, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 8 minutes of segment, they were able to call in those favors that otherwise you can't really do on a feature to kind of drive the costs down. But to answer your other question, the money definitely stretches further outside of Los Angeles. We definitely found that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were some filmmakers who offered to put money into their segments, and then we turned that into equity in the film. So any dollar that they was out of pocket became an investment. So it wasn't a donation or anything like that, which always bothered me on a lot of times in any films, you're just having to kind of donate your own money to it. And that's not right. They should be able to participate in the profits. So we set it up to do that as well.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I think a lot of people wouldn't even think to do that, but I'm glad that you did, because it's definitely one of the industries where there's a high propensity for people to work for free, use their own resources, and because people are passionate, right? And it allows other people to kind of take advantage of that passion. So it's great to hear that you are more forward thinking in that regard.
I'm glad you see that, because that was important to us. I mean, look, we were asking a lot of people to do a lot of favors, but I'm not asking you to spend your own money. So there's a difference. So if you're going to spend your own money, then you get to participate in the rewards that will come from that. And we never asked a single filmmaker to do that on any level, and then the budgets that were given to the filmmakers, there was, I think, one or two directors that paid themselves like a small salary out of that, but the majority, it all went on the screen. And then I can say as producers, we did not pay ourselves a penny for any of this. We had made a feature film. We just wanted to, every dollar that came in, we put on the screen. That was that. And then now we're going to participate in what that means as the film's becoming a success. But that's a risk you have to take, and you have to be willing to do that. But it also, in an anthology, you get to spread out that risk. So you can develop other movies at the same time. So again, we went and made The Pale Door from inception to completion, and it's releasing, less than 2 months later, because we were able to kind of do work in between making all of this, these things happen for Scare Package. And I think that, affording you that kind of a luxury is a really, really interesting way of getting multiple films, going at once. And we kind of, it was hard, don't get me wrong. I went to the hospital at the end of last year, but from pure exhaustion, I literally fainted and woke up with blood on my shirt. So it was tough. But at the same time, the fact that we have these 2 movies coming out now in 2 months is surreal and amazing. And the nature of an anthology allowed that to even be possible.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're okay, and I hope that you don't ever have to experience that level of exhaustion again. But it's also must be amazing now to have the reward of 2 films coming out in quick succession. I wanted to talk a little bit about the post-production process. You mentioned earlier that you had some consistency across the sound and color in order to create more of a cohesive feel. What was the approach? I imagine it must have been crazy getting dailies in or across different, was it all edited in post in the same place, or was it individually edited by the different crews and then assembled into one, feature length piece in the Paper Street house? How did that process come together?
Okay, so the way that it worked for them was, first off, we didn't want to do 2 segments at once, so we would be able to focus on one segment at a time. We would look at their budgets. We would understand, from a production, not getting to post yet, but from a production aspect, how are they spending those dollars? Can we offer you assistance? Hey, we know somebody that can do that cheaper. Let's fly someone. We could actually, there were scenarios where we flew somebody in to help with something because they were cheaper than hiring a person locally. So we used all of our resources that were at our disposal, and the filmmakers, as Cam mentioned, used theirs. But once it actually got into post, they would send us edits as they were coming in, like the first level of edits. They would hire an editor, and their job was simply to get to lock picture. That's it. And then we would give notes and advice getting to lock picture. Then once the picture was locked, sound synced, all that, they sent it to us. And then Alex Uding, who's our post supervisor, and then is also, he's the director of post production for Paper Street as a whole. So this is really his specialty. And we treated this like an assembly line. We worked like showrunners in a way, where here's an episode that's coming out and now needs to go through this process. And the directors would find their initial editor, they would edit the film, then it's delivered to Alex. Alex then is working with coordinating all the finishing of that. So we scheduled out, because keep in mind, our sound designer, our composer, our colorist, all of these are folks who are making a lot more money doing other things, and they agreed to do this. So we would have to wait. They would be like, hey, sorry, we can't go into color yet. They're not available until this date. But then we knew there'd be, sound design's available to do a bunch here. Let's jump in and get 2 segments going at that time. So, we hit some roadblocks at times where segments were done and waiting, and then we couldn't move into something else. Plus, we were raising some money as that was going on as well. We always knew that would be the case. We knew we could get most of them in the can and then get these essentially, to a good place and then continue raising money for post-production, which is very common, even in feature films. There's, the term finishing funds is very common. You get the movie made and then you finish the movie through those funds. So we were working with that process as well. But what that also means is if you don't have all your finishing funds and you did one short early on, but then you wait, it's been 6 months and you haven't raised all your finishing funds because you haven't even finished shooting the other shorts, that film has to wait a while to go through that process. But yeah, Alex Uting he's probably one of the most unsung heroes on this entire project for how he assembled and put together what was happening. And he was kind of the master editor of sorts. The directors had final cuts of their segments. We gave a lot of notes, and where they needed to be, but they had final cut. They said, this is our cut, then that gets delivered to us, then we handle everything from there. And then Alex would assemble that into our master timeline. And then he obviously, Cam and I wrote and I directed the main piece and then the finale. We were able to go in and out of those, and Alex would interweave those stories together. I'm talking with my hands as if this could help, but it's not going to help you.
You've got that hand-waving energy, though. I can feel it.
Yeah. But that was Alex. And then Spencer Hall, who was our sound designer, and Alex Cuervo, who's our composer, and Matt McLean, who's our colorist. So these are great people we've worked with many times before, and kind of said, hey, this is going to be a unique project. It's not all coming at once. It's going to come in these little pieces, one at a time. And we would learn, we learned how to do color grading remotely. We learned how to, there were some things we had to redo and undo, and those were mistakes that were on our side. But then once you get to 2, 3, 4 segments in, now we kind of we're hitting a stride. We had a green light process in pre-production and production where they had to have these contracts, these things in order, these things done. And then we would approve every individual aspect, budgets, crew, all these things. Even though they picked who they wanted, we still kind of just gave a check mark. I don't think there was ever a time where we had to step in and say, you can't hire this person. But we had those, these safeguards in place just in case, just to make sure. But then when it got to post, it was the same thing. It was very assembly line. And it was okay, this segment's coming in. It's ready. Hey, Alex, we're going to have this segment ready in about 2 weeks. Who are you prepping color for what they need to do? Are you prepping sound design? Where does this go? And then Alex created this. Alex and I both worked in tech as project managers. And I think that background helped us a lot. So we created a system very similar to how a software title is going through that process and how those are, coming to fruition. So we had this tracking document of where things were at and deadlines they needed to hit and when this would happen. And look, these are the things in filmmaking that you don't want to think about. It's I just want to get my friends. And look, I have these other podcasts that I'm doing. I'm yeah, we got our friends together. We made this cool movie. And they're wow, that's so cool. And it is. Don't get me wrong, it is. But we also have 500 spreadsheets of Excel madness. Yeah. That is how these things are organized, how we're communicating, what's happening. Ashley Sneed behind the scenes, all the work she did with the legal paperwork. And Cam can tell you right now, we are still right now, because we're about to release the soundtrack on Lakeshore Records. And Cam right now is in these crazy little deals with this music producer company that's this song and how do we have the rights to this? And there's so much work that goes in that you got to have a team. And again, we didn't take a paycheck for any of this, so you have to be that passionate about it and willing to do that work and keep that organized, or it's going to fail.
Yeah, we basically kind of wrote the playbook on this in real time. We decided we were going to do an anthology. We were like, cool, an anthology. And it was just like, we all kind of looked at each other. It was like, cool, how do we do an anthology? And then we kind of created all these systems out of thin air with Ashley and with Sean and with Alex and with everybody that was involved. Chris Phipps as well as the producer on the film. How to, kind of make everything work as seamlessly as possible in production and post-production. And we had to kind of create that using trial and error as like the episodes came in. So it was one of those things where by the time we got towards the end and the last segment shot, it was just like, I feel really good about our process. We don't have anything more to do, but we really nailed it now. Like it took a while to really get there, but I feel like we're in a good spot now. And now we don't have any segments to shoot. But.
Well, and then we had 6 producers on this project, and it was important that it wasn't too many chefs in the pot and that we all had our specialties. So, Chris Phipps, for example, his specialty is effects and looking at the kind of, the design of some of these films. So one of the things we're always heralded on is our ability to pull out these wonderful makeup effects and gore and gags and all that. And a big credit to that was Chris, who he was looking at, okay, what are the gags that are happening in these segments? How do we find the right people to do that for them? And in some situations, he didn't have to get very involved. In other situations, he flew to the set and brought a team in, to get involved. And it kind of depended. So we would get us where that was needed. But like Tate Steinsack, Eric Zapata were a couple folks that were involved in a large majority of the segments. But then, someone like Anthony Cousins, he had Ryan Shaladehi, I think it's Shadley.
Could be wrong.
Ryan's wonderful. Whatever his last name is also wonderful. But, he had Ryan, and it was like they knew exactly what they needed to do. But we still ran it by Chris. We still said, hey, here's how they're going to handle their gags. Chris, do you have any thoughts? He would give his, in my opinion, expert advice on how to do that, and we would go. Cameron and I spent a lot of time on the script development. We were there with like, okay, how are you going to approach this from, what kind of jokes are you telling? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to say? That's Cam's job is development. So that's a big part of what that was. I, as the kind of the head of all the things that were going on, I was the one kind of pushing. I was raising a lot of the money. We all raised money, don't get me wrong, but that was a big part of what I did. And then I also I kind of helped bring in the other directors that maybe we didn't know as well and kind of, talk people into getting into this crazy idea with us. Everybody had different strengths that kind of came to play, and they knew where their lanes were. So when you create those levels of responsibility, it makes it easier to kind of go through and it's like, oh, that's a Sean thing. Oh, that's an Ashley thing. Oh, whatever that needs to be. And that ends up going, a long way in that organization. So that really helped as well.
It also really helped that Sean was in Los Angeles. He's based out of Los Angeles, and so all the segments we had in Los Angeles, we had kind of a Paper Street liaison on set there, which really worked out. And Sean put in a lot of work on those specific segments. So that was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so this question is for all 3 of you individually. What was the biggest challenge you encountered when putting together this anthology?
For me personally, spearheading and producing a couple of the segments I shot out here, as somebody alluded to earlier in the conversation, the dollar doesn't stretch nearly as far in LA. So it was calling in a lot of favors for Becky and I have talked about this, on the show before, that she lives in Seattle, so she knows what an expensive city is like. There's no free rides here in LA because everybody knows, like every mom and pop business knows they can charge you $3,500 to rent their parking lot overnight. So it's really tricky to find, the cheap alternatives. But we somehow managed to find a lady in the West Valley to shoot Noah Segan's segment. He had a scene in the bar, and I found the one lady ever who had never had anything shot, so she didn't know how much I could have paid her, so I paid her a lot less than I could have paid her to use a bar for half a day, and actually used my wife's aunt and uncle's house for another piece of that segment. So a lot of freebies. I think that's part of what we love about filmmaking. It's just constant problem solving with producing and stuff. But the biggest challenge was just kind of stretching, what were micro budgets given to the filmmakers. Like they in the different states they went further than others, but yeah, just I think a financial strain and stretch here was my biggest challenge.
Probably the biggest challenge was just, making sure everyone was kind of swimming in the right direction, in the same direction all the time. It only takes, 1 or 2 segments that are not kind of doing the same thing as every other segment to really kind of pull people out of an anthology. So just making sure everything felt like of the same world and cohesive, and not that everything had to feel the same, but just that everyone was kind of on the same wavelength, that everybody was kind of all moving the same direction. That was not always the easiest thing to get everybody to do, but I think because we were able to do that as best we can, we ended up, I think that's one of the reasons people really enjoy the film.
Yeah, I think for me, one, this is the most enjoyable experience I've had making a movie. So it's a little hard for me to think about what the challenges were, because I just think of how much fun it was to get this done. And, whereas The Pale Door, it's like, ask me about the challenges and like, do you have 3 hours? So it's a different experience. And don't get me wrong, this was a very, very hard movie to make. I think what Cam and Sean were both saying is we did not realize how hard an anthology was. And I think a lot of people, and this is why a lot of anthologies don't work, because they come at this from a place of, oh yeah, well, I can just make 5 shorts. Like I made 1 short, we could do 5. And it's like, well, you can, but they're not going to feel the same world. You're not going to have the organization. Something's going to go wrong. Something's not going to feel right. And you have to have a cohesive vision. But I think from my side, probably the biggest challenge related to that would just be the logistical changes of, oh, wait, we can't use this director now, or they're scheduled to go in August, and then nope, they got a feature, so now we can't do that. So now I need to move somebody else in their slot. Okay, I bumped this person up. Then they're going, and we're dealing with that. Then that person before comes back, oh, never mind, my feature canceled, I'm now available. I'm like, oh, you don't have a spot now. And then, and then somebody else quits. It's like, oh, well, now you can take that person's spot, and it was the juggling of that was really difficult, because it was just trying to keep this balance. And at the same time, we have a list of amazing directors we want to work with, but a lot of them were straight white dudes. And it was like, okay, oh, wait, somebody fell out that that was either a person of color or a female director. And it's like, I want us to find, someone else that has another voice, like I want to find another voice of what this could be. And so you're just always juggling all these different things because you're trying so hard. We tried so hard on this movie on so many levels. It was difficult. And then on a much smaller scale, a little creative challenge that we had was the idea that horror comedy was not making fun of horror, but loving horror in a self-referential way. And there were some ideas that came in that I was like, this feels more scary movie to me, whereas I don't think a lot of the folks involved in that, well, I can say, aren't big horror fans. And I think without naming too many other films, but I think there's a lot of examples of that where it's like, you just think this is beneath you. You think that this is a lower genre. You think that this is B movie, that this is, that you have to say the term elevated genre because it's something that needs to be elevated. And that's bullshit. So I think horror is wonderful. And there are wonderful things that can be said and done within horror. But if you're not willing, and in order to have comedy with that, you have to be able to look at yourself and have self-deprecating humor. And that's what it needs to be. So finding that creatively, that's like, well, how do you we're making fun of this, but I love this so much. And finding that balance so that it has horror with heart. And I will say, I give a lot of credit of that to Emily Higgins, who's somebody who writes horror with heart. And as we're always reading her scripts and we've got multiple projects for her we're trying to get off the ground because she's amazing. And you all know that. You interviewed her on a podcast recently. But she always has heart in her horror films. And I think that this is something that we kind of saw. And that was available so much so in her, her segment Cold Open that we customized the ending to bring that full circle. That was not planned that way. We did this, and the way those things tie together without spoiling everything was we saw what Emily did. We fell in love with the character she created, and then we added them into the wrap. And then later, when an opportunity became to have this bigger ending, we're like, wait, let's bring this back together. And again, when you're making a movie over a long period of time, it allows you to have these take a step back and think, oh, what would be cool if we had done this instead? Well, you do that all the time on a feature and you can't do it. But in this, we were able to wait to do the wrap and do the finale in specific ways to take advantage of what all these other amazingly talented filmmakers had done.
Yeah, I think the North Star for us was always, we obviously wanted to be funny. We wanted to kind of make fun of tropes as a genre, but we always wanted horror fans for the directors. We always wanted people that loved horror, and so they're poking fun of it from a place of love and not from a place of, this is a dumb movie that doesn't understand like how movies work. Like, we didn't want any of that. We wanted people who just loved horror and were cracking on it for the right reasons. And I think we really nailed that. I mean, the directors and the producers on this movie, they'd win a lot of horror trivia contests, I can tell you that. They know what they're doing.
And have.
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah. Some of the key crew members of Scare Package were the trivia winners at Telluride Horror Show.
I just brought that up so we could get a quick plug about our channel.
Yes. I think we've plugged it a couple times on the show already.
It's been mentioned every episode somehow.
As it should.
Yeah, somehow it just always naturally comes up. So what advice would you give to a filmmaker that's attempting to make their own anthology? Other than listen to this entire podcast and all the stories that you just told, but if there's kind of something you could distill down to a quick bit of advice.
I would say don't use the fact that it's kind of the same thing I would tell people if they were making like a found footage movie or something. Don't use anthology as a crutch. Don't use it because it's easier, because it's really not, to do well. Like, use it for the right reasons. Be clever. Be smart about how you do it. Come at it from a different perspective. There are really great things you can do in an anthology film that's not been done before. Try to do that. Don't just try to do it because it seems simpler and you can make a couple shorts and just glue them together. Like, try to come at it in a way that is new and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's filmmaking and screenwriting as a whole is really what the approach needs to be with that. I mean, Cam and I right now are writing a slasher film, and we have this great hook, and we love what it is. We love this concept. And then I was like, yeah, but right now it's still just a slasher film. Here's a moment at the end of Act 2. What is changing in this movie that makes this truly unique? And I was like, we can't make this film. We will not greenlight this as a potential project internally until I've wrapped my head around what makes this unique and what is different about this than anything else we're doing. And that is something that we push for every project we have. So yeah, I mean, don't use it as a crutch is great, because I think there are just misconceptions about, again, people look at it because a lot of people have made short films. And it's like, well, I can just do that over and over and over again. And sure, you could. You also could just go out and you could offer, $500 to 6 filmmakers and you have an anthology. And the problem is that takes no originality. That takes no, how are these tied together? What is there? We spent a lot of time we customized the wraparound based on the segments that were afforded to us. So when we saw and one of the things we asked when we were even writing that is I would say, hey, give me the first frame of your storyboard for what you're doing and the last frame, so what those could be and how we could tie them together. So, with the Andahar segment, it ends with these like feathers that are falling, and it's this it looks so good. But they shot it so beautiful at the Madonna Inn, and it's amazing. But then we had to go back to this really goofy comedy right after that. So how do you transition that? So then we took the actual feathers that they had. I had her mail me the feathers. And then we threw them in the air in the wraparound, and then it comes down and it's him, hitting Han with a pillow, and the feathers are coming up as he's training him to be a better employee. And it's so stupid, but it just transitions those scenes, in a fun way. And so going in and out of each segment was really important. That it couldn't just be, because the easy answer, all filmmaking, don't take the easy answer. Like, what is more complex? That's the easy answer. But what can we do that's different? When you hear, and what I like about as people are discovering this film is they're like, oh, it takes place at a video store. I get it. So it's a guy just putting tapes in over and over again, and we're watching clips. And it's like, no, that's actually not what's happening. It opens on a clip, and then it seamlessly goes into that, and that's a different story altogether. And one story is pantomiming going in and out, and there are a couple stories that do have a tape, but one's related to a plight that's happening in the story, and it's integral. And, so how do you do that? And how do you say, if this is what people will expect, how do I subvert those expectations? So again, that's filmmaking as a whole. But you're gonna, if you're not a leader of people and you don't have the ability to get everybody kind of gathered on the same page, your anthology is gonna fail. Or it's just gonna feel like, go on Amazon Prime right now and just search anthologies. there are hundreds of, and I watch every goddamn horror movie. And I know, Becky, it's just like, we're in the same field. Like, I have a kinship to you in that way because, first off, I've known except for the last deep cut you said, I did not know, which was the first one I did not know.
Oh,
which was
good. I'm glad I got you.
Yeah, I was really stoked, and I was glad that happened. But I take a lot of pride in that I'm trying to always watch all this stuff. And when I was going through the anthologies that vaunted weekend where I made my spreadsheet, I was like, what the hell is this? And you know what's crazy? I watched anthologies that had the same shorts in them multiple times because people just license it and they're like, yeah, and they don't care. And then it gets thrown up there and people think that they're not trying. And that's a problem because is a quote unquote easier way to put a feature film out there without taking the time to do this. We had people who offered us films that were already made and we said no every time. No matter what we thought of that film, we said no. We're like, nope, this is going to be birthed out of this idea and we're going to create this together. And I think the fact that we stuck to our guns to that really helped. So, look, you're going to have an opportunity to cut a corner. You're going to think about it. It's going to be easier. But if you stop and you challenge yourself to do something different, I think it can really help make the product even that much better.
I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me with Scare Package versus other anthologies is really kind of the feel of the wraparound not just being like for the service of, queuing up a variety of unrelated films of different subject matters. It really kind of reinforces those stories. So that's why it's interesting to hear that you were able to go back and craft it and tweak it and evolve it as the rest of the films were coming together. Because Scare Package collectively, it almost feels like they're all interrelated, even though some of them are more to a greater extent than others. But the wraparound itself feels like it's its own world and its own story, and it's funny and engaging. It's not just a vehicle for delivering disparate shorts. And then by the end, you really get a great kind of payoff of the whole package, pun intended.
I think we always knew that there was an opportunity, going back to Aaron's deep dive, and I watched a bunch too, not as many as he did, I'm sure, but we always knew there was an opportunity with the wraparound to be something more. That we hadn't seen a lot of movies use the wraparound to its fullest potential. And so kind of early on, we knew we wanted to do that. And we definitely kicked around some different ideas and kind of eventually landed with more or less what you see in the movie now. But we also waited until everything else had been shot before we actually sat down and wrote the wraparound. Like I said, we had a strong idea of kind of what we wanted to do on like a macro level, but we waited until everybody else had shot their stuff to sit down and actually write it. And I think because we went at it in that way, that's why the stuff feels more connected, really probably than they actually are. You know what I mean? As far as like segment to segment, because of the ins and outs and the fact that we could tailor to the specific things going on in the segment, I think that really allowed us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we actually shot the whole ending before we finished writing the wrap. We knew how it was going to end, so we knew where we were going to go to, but we customized the wrap, based on, as Kim was saying, all of those different aspects that were there. So one of the things that we tried to do with the wraparound in particular was a rule that we had that I kind of set forth early on was if you did not watch any of the segments and you only watched the wraparound and then the finale, that could be one cohesive movie. So if nothing even happened, you never went and left that point of view to go into a segment, that you had the ability to have one cohesive movie. So, and once you kind of set that rule and you say, nope, you can't break that rule, then that kind of created some groundwork for us to have something be a little bit different.
It really does show that effort, and it does make it feel a lot more seamless. And, kind of transitioning that, we talked a little bit about Chattanooga at the start, but Scare Package played at a lot of festivals before Chattanooga, so thankfully you got to have some great in-person premieres and get to see it with an audience several times. What are some of your favorite moments from the festival, seeing all of this come together?
We were really lucky to have the festival response that we had and the folks that loved it. I mean, there were so many great moments that happened through there. I mean, it was sad to have the ones that were canceled at the end. I was going to go to Brussels for that. And again, we were going to be in person for Chattanooga, Florida Film Festival, which is a festival very, very close to my heart. You guys talked to Tim Anderson, and so that was something I really wanted to do. We were actually going to go I was going from Chattanooga to Florida. Then I was going to go down to Miami for the drive-in screening, which we just had. Well, there wasn't drive-in then. It was a different, a normal screening. And then I was going to Chicago for another festival for Windy City Horror. And so that was really exciting. And then all that changed. But look, we're the lucky ones. I mean, we had our world premiere at Sitges in Spain, the most beautiful city I've ever been to in my entire life, and was like, I actually was just going through photos on my phone the other day because I had to clean up the storage on my phone. And I found so many videos and photos because everywhere you look, you're like, where am I? What is this? Like Barcelona and Sitges, Catalonia. Like, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful place. And Cameron, Ashley, Jeremy King, we all got to go out there. It was surreal. Even Nadia Bobaleva, who was an actress from our first movie, like she met us because she lives in Germany, and she met us out there as well. And it was really, really cool. And then to fly from the most beautiful city in Europe to the most beautiful city in the United States to Telluride was pretty cool because we went straight from Sitges to Telluride to play Telluride Horror, which was really great. And other than having to see, Brad McHarg, it was a great time. It was
nothing's perfect.
Yeah. So no, there's, you can't win them all. So. Love you, Brad. Isn't like his birthday or something, or was, or close?
His birthday was this week, so you picked the perfect time to skewer him, and I'll go to the other room right after this and punch him in the shoulder for you.
Happy birthday, Brad. Sorry Becky punched you in the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's awesome now from all those festival experiences. Now you're premiering on Shudder shortly. I don't know how much of this you can share, but I'm really curious about how you built that pathway from the festival circuit to, getting a distribution deal with Shudder.
Well, we sold the movie to Shudder before we ever played at a festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that people don't know that we didn't announce Shudder till so recently, but Shudder bought the film a long time ago. So I had already kind of, met with, I've known some of the folks that were at Shudder, and I'd gone to the film market in Santa Monica, AFM, and just, asked to have meetings with them, and Emily Gatto, and who's like the head of acquisitions. And I just, look, when I did my meetings at AFM about Paper Street, it was never actually about a specific movie. It was always just about, hey, we're here to make genre films. We're not going away. We're going to continue making movies. You should know me. And if you don't, then, I'm here to say hi. And if you don't want to take the meeting, I totally get it. And these are people I did not know a lot of times. I just said, but I'm going to be around and we're going to be making stuff. So I'm here to say hi. And what that did was that got me in the door for meetings that normally it's like, hey, I want to pitch you a movie. And they're like, oh, I don't want to take more pitches that day. And I just talked. I did not talk specifically about film all the time. And what was so great is that, but I had a booklet, we had a pamphlet that we put together that had different, movies and stuff on our slate and what we were doing and what was happening. And, I had that scare package was in post-production, and everybody they would ask about the movies. And that was so great because I just created this very easygoing situation. And then all of a sudden now they're asking me and then I'm answering their questions. And next thing you know, they're interested in representing the movie, selling the movie, buying the movie, and all of that. So that's kind of where all of this happened. And that's, I've tried to foster that and then those relationships. I've gone now for a few years in a row, and I do it all the time just to kind of get us out in front of people. So if I hear of a company that's doing something new that's in genre, I reach out to them every single time. And I say, hey, I'm Aaron. I run this company. Here's what we're doing. We've made these movies. No, I'm not here pitching you anything. I just want you to know who I am. I want to say hi. When I'm in LA, I say, hey, I'm in LA. Do you want to have coffee? Like, here, let me buy you coffee. We'll talk. And we talk movies. And I talk movies. And I look for people that understand, because part of this too is we're now in the luxury where we're not just pitching to everyone, we are deciding who we want to partner with. And the amount of people that wanted Scare Package, I mean, we turned down offers from other companies, a lot of offers. And I went with folks who got it. Now, Shudder, I always knew, especially when the Joe Bob thing happened, I was like, they're going to want this. Like, this is so perfect for them. It's so inside baseball. I mean, that's how even Ryan Turk called it that on his tweet about it. He said, there's a lot of inside baseball jokes. And I'm like, yes, it is. It is for the diehard horror fans. And we played once at a festival that was like not primarily horror. It was like partially horror. And the crowd response was not nearly as good. It was still good, but it was not nearly as good because I think if you're not a horror fan, it's just not, you're not going to get all the jokes. And even diehard horror fans, I'm still like, oh, did you notice this? And I'm like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, that's there. Because it's hidden. Like there's so many Easter eggs and fun things that we layered in. But those nods are to Shudder fans. Shudder fans will get it. So we had positioned that specifically for them. And then Shudder actually reached out to me when they heard about the film. And so we started talking and negotiated for a long time. We had a lot of back and forth. But yeah, we sold that film in October or something before. God, actually, my timeline's so off. I don't even know when we sold the film. It's so weird. But it was definitely well before any festivals had happened.
Yes.
Like well before any festivals.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so important to be out there and be genuine and be sincere and just get to know people. And I think that can't be emphasized enough. Like the ideal scenario is that you're not reaching out with an ask or asking for favors or saying, hey, come look at my film, look at my script. I mean, there's room for that too, but there's something to be said about reaching out, engaging in the film community, attending festivals, going to film markets and just taking meetings with people because you never know when it might make sense for you to collaborate and you kind of can build, extend your network of people that you want to work with, people you like and people that will maybe reach out to you proactively instead of having to do it the other way all the time. So I think that's a really great story. And I'm glad you kind of shared that because I think it's hopefully inspiring to some people, but also something we can all learn from to just like put yourself out there, but just make sure you're genuine about it. To your point about like, you just talked about movies. You didn't ask anything of them. You just said, I'm here. I want to get to know you. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chase Williamson's been in a lot of things that we've done. He's going to continue being in projects with us. My relationship with Chase Williamson, so keep in mind, Chase was in a movie, The Guest, that Adam Wingard directed, and I know Adam. I could have gone to Adam and said, hey, introduce me to Chase Williamson. But I didn't do that. Instead, after John dies at the end, and I was at South by, and I love the movie, I, told him how much I loved his performance. I followed him on Twitter. Every time things were going on, I would tag him, tweet about him, and I just was supportive because his performance in John Dies at the End is phenomenal. I still love him in that movie so much. And he knew me as someone who was just being supportive. And because that's all I was. I didn't have an agenda with that. I loved what he did and I loved that movie. And then all of a sudden a time came and then he had followed me back on Twitter and he, we tweeted back and forth so many times. And then the time came when I said, hey man, I hate to bother you. I know you're probably busy. I gave all the disclaimers you normally would. But I have a project I would love. I think you could be a part of. I think it'd be really great. And I didn't have anything for him to see. I had a short film that he could see. That was it. But it wasn't relative to what he would be doing. And he responded. He's like, oh, yeah, are you kidding me? Of course. Anything for you. You've always been so supportive. And he just went on this tirade about how much he appreciated, what I had done. And it just made me feel so great. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, so I think I handled this right. And now, Chase is an advocate and a friend and somebody that I can literally the last time, we've talked a couple of times, but I texted him. I was like, hey, we're writing a character for you right now. He does this, this, and this. It's this ridiculous. I want you in it. And he just texted back. He's like, I'm in. Just let me know when. Right. So now that's how I hired Chase Williamson. So you reach that point because you become friends and you know these folks and that's what goes on. But it started because I just was a genuine fan. And look, I noticed the people. There are people right now that want us to work with them. And we don't want to work with people we don't like. Just to be honest, the people that are difficult and frustrating, and there's just something to be said about that we want to work with folks that are a positive, that are trying to do something different.
Be nice, be supportive. It doesn't cost you anything. It's the right thing to do. And you'll build up a bunch of goodwill. Everybody wins.
That's a great way to end it.
No, agreed. And it kind of will segue into the next half of this. And these guys are no stranger to this, as they've heard previous episodes. So we will jump in to the Rapid Fire 15 with them both. I think without order, there's chaos. So what we'll do is have Cam answer first and Aaron answer second, because he'll have a moment to think about it while Cam blurts whatever thing he thinks of.
I love it. That way Aaron can tell me how bad my choices are.
No, he'll be in his head thinking of the answer, but I want to give him those extra couple seconds.
Yeah, we'll see.
This is a mistake. Cam just off the top of his head saying things is how we end our company. So
well, that's kind of what the point of the rapid fire is. We're too lenient. I think we need to actually start getting strict and make it legitimately rapid fire. First thing that comes to mind.
I'm ready.
Yeah. I'll start counting down, and there'll be a consequence. at the end of the countdown if you don't answer.
Oh my God,
Okay.
I'm actually nervous. Like
I am beyond ready for this.
like Sean knows this too. Like I'm really bad when there's a timer. Like I'm really.
That's why I'm having Cameron go first.
My nickname in junior high was One Shot from Glory because I shot there was like a basketball tournament thing and you had to make like 8 threes or whatever. That was at this tournament called Hoop It Up. And I made like 6 or 7 of my first 8 or 9 shots. And then I heard the guy say, just one more shot, just one more. And you go. And then I buckled and I like airballed everything like under that kind of pressure.
He peed himself and ran away.
It was so bad. Yeah. Well, and then there was another one, Kim. What was the thing we did at Panic Fest? And somebody asked a question and it was.
Oh, that was, yeah, we both screwed that one up.
But the question was, keep in mind, The Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time. And they would name a quote and you had to name the movie. The quote they named was, "Here's Johnny." And I couldn't answer it because I felt the timer going on in my head and I panicked and I could not answer The Shining. Ugh.
And I know all this, and that's why Cameron's answering first, so Aaron has those couple seconds.
Sean is like, I've thought this through.
Yes.
Stop complaining and let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to kick it off. All right. What movie do you think you've seen the most in your entire life?
Probably The Wizard of Oz. I was kind of obsessed with that movie when I was a kid. I knew all the lines. My mom says I would just watch it like every day. So it's definitely Wizard of Oz, although not as much in the last 10 years. Still a great movie, though.
Jaws. Like, it's not even close, Jaws.
You did great, Aaron. That was right there.
Well, that's a very easy one because Jaws really is. I mean, yeah, it's like not even close. You could add the next 10 movies up together and it wouldn't be Jaws.
What's a film that's kind of universally regarded as bad, but you unabashedly love? Your favorite bad movie?
Oh, that's tough. There's a lot of them. I really like a lot of the Michael Bay movies, Pearl Harbor excluded. A lot of the Michael Bay movies like Armageddon and those early Bay spectacles, I'm a big fan of.
I like sports movies and I like the bad sports movies. So I really like Rocky V.
Oh.
And even though it's not, I understand why people don't like Rocky V. But if you just fast forward to the moment where he's fighting Tommy Morrison and he does that thing, he's like, "We was like this, Tommy," and before they fight, I can't take it. I'll cry every time. So yeah, it's the bad sports movies definitely. Would be, they're a guilty pleasure. But I will say, guilty pleasure is like a weird thing, right? It should just be movies you enjoy. Who cares if they're whatever they are? Just enjoy them regardless. But I do know Rocky V is not a good movie. So I'll just go ahead and say that.
When I bought the Rocky box set in college, I threw Rocky V in the fireplace and burned it. True story.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
That's how much I hate Rocky V.
That's ridiculous.
You showed them. You sure showed them, Cameron.
Yeah, dude. Tommy Morrison had AIDS. That's really insensitive.
Tommy the Machine Gun.
His real name's
Oh,
Tommy
wow.
Morrison. Yeah.
No, I agree I'm anti the idea of a guilty pleasure too. I wasn't saying a movie you're guilted for liking so much as one that's kind of universally, it's bad in your heart, but you still love it without problem. But yeah, Rocky V is a good answer, and so is Cameron's story about chucking it in the fire.
All right, so since you made a whole movie about them, what is your favorite horror movie trope or cliche?
I love that when you're looking at zombies, they are so loud and annoying. Yet, if you're not looking at zombies, they can sneak up on you and bite you like a ninja.
I never thought about that until just now.
Neither have I. That completely distracted me. That's so weird. Of all the things I thought you were going to answer, it's not the
I
one
would love to do a segment about that. I just don't know what it is yet. We'll see.
That's
Care Package 8 will have that segment in it.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, the trip, I just love all the dumb things that people do, just as a whole. The ways that I've gotten to a point where I just I laugh at them in a kind way, where it's like, oh, you had to deal with that, so there's a reason for you not to have your cell phone working. I'm like, oh, yep, here's a reason for you to run up the stairs, or, that kind of stuff. But then particularly, though, I really like mirror gags. I wrote a mirror gag specifically in a scare package because we needed to have one, and I think they're really good. Oculus has some of the best ones. Obviously, the greatest mirror gag of all time is the end of is it Salem's Lot? Yeah, Salem's Lot. But that's a great, he sees it in the mirror and he gets sucked through the mirror. But I remember I watched a bunch of mirror gags, like a master cut of mirror gags, and it made me really happy because they're ridiculous. I love mirror gags.
I also have a second one that I really love. Is that Against the Rules?
Go ahead.
This is going to get edited out anyways.
We'll allow it.
I also love that in horror movies, no matter how convincing people are, the cops never believe anybody. Killer Clowns from Outer Space has the best, where like you could have walked one of those killer clowns in front of the cop and the cop would have been like, that's just your buddy in a suit. I love that the cops are just never, ever going to buy it.
Well, I love this happens in a lot of slasher movies too, where like women are totally gaslit by everyone around them, like, oh, it was in your head, you weren't really attacked, or I think someone's following me. Nah, that's just a crazy neighbor. It's amazing. Like even in modern slasher films, they do it, and it drives me nuts.
And reality, if we may say so.
Yes, unfortunately.
How about what is your favorite horror movie franchise?
Nightmare on Elm Street. I was, as a kid, I was that 5-year-old who was wandering around Blockbuster and the video stores that predate Blockbuster, just renting all the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels and all that stuff. And Freddy's always been kind of my slasher of choice. I love all the other ones too. I don't have like a super, super strong allegiance to one over any of the others, but that's definitely the OG for me.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is very obvious. This is like my Jaws answer. It's so Friday the 13th and always will be Friday the 13th. It's the movie that got me into horror films in a weird way because, well, I mean, like there were some other movies that really showed me what it was like to be scared, but those were the movies I wanted to go see. Like in a horror film in my head was Jason Voorhees. That's what a horror film was when I was a kid, and I was not allowed to watch any of them. So, yeah, Friday the 13th, except for Friday the 13th Part 5, of course. If you could just get rid of New Beginning, we don't have to go there, Becky. Now that we're finally here confronting this, but yes.
If I may interject, she's not making this up because we're sharing a document. We have these questions laid out a certain way. Becky, please say what your next question is.
Okay, my next question is, name the best Friday the 13th film, and why is it Part 5, A New Beginning?
It isn't, and now I will let Aaron take you to task.
Oh, come on.
Okay, but what is your favorite Friday the 13th film?
My favorite Friday the 13th film is definitely 4 with Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
It's 4 is easily not only the best sequel to that series, it's easily the best film in that series. Friday the 13th is weird because the first one isn't particularly good, which is like the antithesis of every other horror franchise.
I think easily is a tough one. I mean, that's my favorite as well. 4 is my favorite as well. But I think 2 maybe has the best pure craft as far as, crafting the scares. I love the final girl and how they handled her into specifically. And then I really like what Tommy McLaughlin did in 6 because he just was having fun with it. It's the first like real zombie Jason. It's the one that has the most fun. But wait, we don't get to just skip over this though. Like this is important because like New Beginning is everything that's wrong in horror sequels. It's like we don't even have to have Jason and we're just going to do this whole thing. The acting is the worst in the entire series, the worst. The one thing, you made a good point on Twitter, as we have passionately had discussions, I would call them, is that I do love that they go for it and that it's the most gratuitous probably of all of them, although 7 probably is close with that. And that's part of what I love 7. I love 7 because the kills are so great. Plus it has the best kill in all of Friday the 13th, which is
the sleeping bag.
Absolutely. Yeah. The best kill. It's so raw. Although I will say the 2009 homage to that of the sleeping bag that's hanging over the fire is a pretty rad kill too.
It's actually a lot more visceral and violent. The sleeping bag in Part 7 is quick. It gets over with really quickly. I do like the Jason X kind of their homage to that as well, where he starts beating the 2 sleeping bags, like the one person against each other in the sleeping bag.
Yeah. No, that's great. Jason X is a tough one to get through for me because it's just so ridiculous. But the kills in Jason X are fantastic, so that always kind of bumps it up a little bit in my list.
Yeah. Oh, the frozen person shattering in Jason X.
Oh, that's great.
So good.
That's great. But I love, so Part 5 isn't my favorite. I joke, and I threw that question in specifically to poke at Aaron. Part 2, I think, is the best, and it's my favorite for some of the reasons Aaron spoke about. I think it's actually legitimately scary at times. I think the potato sack Jason is actually kind of a terrifying image, and I love that he's kind of like this feral person living out in the woods, and like Jenny is like the best final girl in the whole Friday the 13th series. She's smart. She actually analyzes Jason and brings a lot of interesting things and depth to his character, or at least as she's speculating about him. But Part 5 is the most fun. It's like a grindhouse movie and a Friday the 13th film smashed together. It's incredibly violent, and also like the F word is used in it more than any of the other films, and that just tickles me for some reason. I don't know, it's just wacky and it's never boring. It's never boring. And I don't mind that Jason's not in it. I like when slasher series try new things and play around with your expectations.
Michael Myers isn't in Halloween 3, and that's a great addition.
Exactly.
But that's not canon. As we said in our movie, the joke I wrote was when he talks about Season of the Witch, is I love Season of the Witch, but Season of the Witch is I look at that as a standalone film that's not part of the Halloween franchise. They used, and even they thought of it that way. That's what they wanted to do. And I think, I mean, I actually find New Beginning unbelievably boring, but that's okay. I think it's so, I mean, I've skipped it every time I've gone through and rewatched them because I had so much anger watching it the first time. It was so frustrating to me, and I just feel like it's so clumsy. But you know, maybe I'll revisit because I respect your opinion and I'll look into it. So try it. I will say, speaking of Ginny, I couldn't think of her name when I was talking about the Final Girl Part 2. I actually sent clips of how Ginny interacted with the killer to our Final Girls, Zoe Graham and Josephine McAdam, as reference in Scare Package. So it was just the way that she fought for herself, the way that she thought through things. And keep in mind, we're doing this in a comedic way, but there's just a way of like, why are all these people stupid? And like, I've got stuff figured out that you don't, and I'm making the right decisions, was something that I thought she did really well into, and that I asked them to kind of tap into. So the next time you watch the last segment of Scare Package and you look at the reactions that Zoe Graham, who plays the final girl in the movie, you'll see her as even things are happening in the foreground, she's in the background like, what is going on with these people, like all the time. And I think a part of that comes from how I perceived, even though Ginny didn't do that necessarily on screen in 2, I just felt like she was the only smart one in that entire movie. So, which was really cool. And but yeah,
awesome.
Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this called the Rapid Fire 15?
We gave you some leeway, so we got to give them some leeway.
Okay, I was just checking.
Okay, we can move on. We can move on. Fine.
Next, what is your favorite movie that stars Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Ooh, Terminator. The first Terminator. I think the first Terminator is a pretty close to perfect movie. The effects are a little spotty here and there, but the storyline is aged like a fine wine. I think it's so good. One of the best sci-fi movies. He's got a lot of other movies that I like quite a bit, especially growing up in the 80s, but none as good as the first Terminator.
Man, I was going to say Terminator because I just watched it again recently. So normally my answer would always be Terminator 2 or Predator, and I'd be kind of like juggling back and forth between those two. But I rewatched the first Terminator, and other than it's really one scene where the effects are kind of tricky. When it's the one where they're doing the CGI and it's walking toward the door and they close the door. But I mean, the tech noir scene where they go into that club and all that happens is phenomenal. Like James Cameron is so on top of his craft in that movie. It's crazy. James Cameron gets some shit because people don't like Avatar. That man is a really good filmmaker. Like he
has never made a bad movie. He's
so good at how he does this. And that for a movie from 1984 and what they do, it's so great. Plus, it's also what I like about it is, in comparison to the second one, is that it doesn't have the quips from him. Like he's evil in that one. And I like him better as that than I do as like hasta la vista shit, you know. And plus, what's his name? The kid in the second one. As I rewatched that right after Edward Furlong, yes. So I like Edward Furlong as he grew up as an actor, got a lot better, but oof. He's got some yippee moments that are very Jar Jar-esque that are hard for me to get through. So,
all right, fair enough. So we'll see if that blends into this next question. Who is your favorite all-time director?
Ooh, that's so hard. Probably Quentin Tarantino. There's 3 or 4 that I wanted to say all at the same time, but I love Quentin Tarantino. I'm a big fan. I know that David Guillermo stole that answer already on the previous podcast.
No, his all-time was Scorsese. I asked him what his favorite Tarantino movie was.
That's right. No, I think it's probably Tarantino. I just think, like, because he hit me at the right time, you know, people that are in film in our age group are all kind of Tarantino acolytes, at least a lot of them are. And then Pulp Fiction was just such a hugely influential film for me that it's probably Tarantino. I mean, obviously, Scorsese's amazing and Spielberg's amazing. There's definitely a handful that could easily have been the choice there, but I'm sticking with Tarantino.
I mean, growing up my whole life was Spielberg, but Cam and Sean here definitely, well, Alex too. Everybody who really knows me knows the answer to this, and it's Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's not even close right now. I have he's a big reason why I even got back into film. Even though I will say, Sean, like Josh is one who kind of pushes at the last moment to sign up for film school, because Sean and I went to film school together. But I mean, the seed was planted after watching Magnolia, and that changed the way I looked at movies and the way that I wanted to tell stories. And I've watched and read every single thing that he has available. I've watched his short films on VHS, although I guess now they're on YouTube. I've watched every alternate commentary track, every interview. I just feel like he has a knowledge and an approach to how he makes his movies and the types of stories that he tells and the way that he works with his characters that is unique to everyone else that's out there. And I'm a just absolutely massive Paul Thomas Anderson fan.
What would be your guys' dream project to direct, whether that's an IP or an original idea?
I've said this before. I would love to adapt The Running Man, Stephen King's Running Man, not necessarily to redo the 80s movie, which is not at all like the novel. The actual novel is a lot more like The Game, the Fincher movie about just kind of a guy running around who can't trust anybody. And I think there's a really, really great movie there. I've always thought that. So yeah, if someone's just going to give me a blank check, I would love to take a crack at that.
You've asked other people this, and I've thought about it at those times, and I didn't even know what my answer was then. Look, there's an easy answer of I really would love to be the person to finally take on Friday the 13th. I have a lot of, I believe, interesting ways of doing this, and I'm very familiar with what David Bruckner, who's, by the way, one of the best working directors in the business, what he was going to do with the found footage version of this. But I have a different take on it, so that really interests me. But, I want to make our own movies. Cameron and I, we write things that we want to make. So right now, what I want to make the most is probably, maybe Dream Machine as a script that Cameron and I wrote with Farrell Rose. That's a sci-fi body horror Cronenberg kind of style thing that we want to do. And but then, we're also writing this horror sports comedy movie called Demon Derby. And then I'm writing that. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. So it's going to be what we write. That's what I get most excited about more than anything, is these weird original ideas that we come up with.
Ooh, I want to see Demon Derby. That needs to be made.
It's fun. It's so stupid fun. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Speaking of sports movies, what sports movies always make you cry? Or maybe in Aaron's case, what makes you cry the most, since there might be multiple, it sounds like.
Yeah, I can go first there because it's every sports movie makes me cry. So number one, truly, it's sad. In fact, you could just play the last 2 minutes of Rocky 2 when he's in the ring and they're announcing the part and he's trying to get to Adrian, or whatever. And he's just trying to get to her and they're trying to figure out what happened. I'll cry just in that 2 minute moment. But to jump ahead of Cameron there, the one that makes me cry the most is Rudy. And it always has been. That's a movie that's very, I had I was a Notre Dame fan growing up and everything, but fuck football now, I don't care. But I really loved Notre Dame, and Rudy was a story that I heard as a kid, about if you work hard enough, you can achieve your dreams and all this. And so that was a movie that really meant a lot. And then when he wins the respect of Jon Favreau and he's there, it's weird, when they cut to the crowd at the end of Rudy and Jon Favreau's who's the wild man now? And then his dad and his brother who gave him all the shits, you did it. I can't. I'm not kidding. Right now, I'm getting choked up thinking about it. So that's how sad this is. And then I met Jon Favreau at South by Southwest many years ago, and everybody's talking to him about all his big movies or whatever. And I was like, dude, this is one of the only fan moments I've really ever had. I made Jon Favreau next to me do the "Who's the Wild Man Now" bit at the end of Rudy. It's on YouTube. You can find it. And I'm even joking with him, I'm going to cry right now. I'm going to go cry. So, yeah, Rudy.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the exact same way. A lot of sports movies make me cry. I grew up, playing sports, watching sports. I'm still a huge sports fan. The human drama in sports is very, very hard to duplicate. It's very hard to do better than that. There's amazing human drama just built into sports. A lot of them make me cry, but Rudy is the one. I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I don't like Notre Dame, but that story is it's built in a laboratory to make men cry.
It is. It really is. But that's also why we're trying to do Demon Derby, because we love these sports movies and there's ways of but we're doing a comedy with it. So we're making fun of all the sports tropes. Because also, have you ever seen a sports horror movie? No. So that's why we want to make it.
Next, what is your greatest personal sports or sports-related memory, whether that's personal or one of your favorite teams, one of the big one?
There's two. I don't know that I can differentiate them. I was at the 1991 Orange Bowl when Florida State won their first national championship. I'm a big Florida State fan, and so that was obviously a huge game for me to be at in person. I think that was the first major football game I had ever been to. I think I'd been to some like smaller high school football and stuff like that, but going to that game was huge. And also I was at the game where the Orlando Magic knocked off Jordan's Bulls to go to the finals, and Nick Anderson stole the ball from Michael Jordan, and it was like a big thing. I was at that game too. So those are the two that immediately come to mind.
Wow, this is tough for me. Like there's so many. Because again, I grew up like a big sports fan, and I have a weird father issues, and sports are a weird tie to that with me. So I look at some of these past sports moments in different ways, jumping into the pool when Rick Smits beat the Magic and Shaq in that one shot and stuff like that are really fun. But, and I was at the Super Bowl when the Colts won in the same Orange Bowl that Cameron was at years earlier. And Prince played at halftime. I got to meet Prince. That's surreal. And he was walking around and it was raining, and he just goes, "It's raining," like in his own Prince way. He's like 4 feet tall, by the way. That was a really cool moment. But as a kid, I was able to be a part of the Indiana Pacers basketball camp. And, it kind of came with like the sweatsuit this is the 80s, so like the sweatsuit of Indiana Pacers stuff and gear. And then I was taught how to shoot free throws by Reggie Miller, who's one of the greatest free throw shooters and shooters of NBA history. So that was a really like unbelievably cool thing to have as a kid. And then my church got to play at halftime for a Pacers game. So we got to go out and play on the actual court in a Pacers game and play for like 5 minutes or whatever it was. And I hit a long shot during that game, and the crowd cheered. And I've never knew what that sounded like, or I had no idea what that was like. And there's 10,000 people there. It was crazy. Like I remember that so vividly right now when I hit that look, because nobody could make anything, because we were like kids. We were like 8 years old, so we sucked at basketball. So nobody could get anything. And I hit one of the shots that was made, and everybody cheered. And I still remember that so vividly. Basketball's still really important to me. Like football, I just have so many personal issues with like the way it's handled and the CTE stuff and all that I'm just not participating in football anymore. And I finally have drawn a line on that. But basketball, I still love. I love so much. So yeah, it's definitely, and there's others I could mention too. I've been very lucky to go to a lot of cool sporting events.
Aaron's been chasing that pop ever since.
Man, in a weird way, yes.
All right, I think this one might get a little too personal, so be prepared. What's one go-to item that you always get when you go to Taco Bell?
I usually get a beef chalupa supreme with almost any order I get there. My order at Taco Bell, as opposed to many other places, is pretty fluid. I don't have like a set generic order like I do at almost everywhere else because I'm a total creature of habit. But I almost always get a beef chalupa supreme, and I almost always get a steak soft taco.
Yeah, those are whatever about those answers. So listen, in order to answer this question properly, I have to know which Taco Bell we're talking about, because as a resident chubby man, I'm very aware of the chili cheese burrito, aka originally the Cholito, until they learned what Cholito meant, and then they changed the rules of that. But there's a map you can go to online. I think it's called chilicheesetacos.com or something like that. But there's a map, and it shows you which Taco Bell still show and have the chili cheese burrito. So I have looked at that map. I'm clearly aware of that map. And so if there's a chili cheese burrito, I'm getting it. And if I had a cooler, I would probably buy multiple of them and put them in a cooler to keep them as I travel outside of chili cheese happy cities. So
I know I'm not supposed to ask the questions here, but I have to know what the furthest you've driven based on that map to get a chili cheese burrito is.
Well, I can
say... As your lawyer, I would tell you to not answer that question.
No. I don't think... Well, I mean, if we go back in the day, I think Shane and I once drove across state lines to get a chili cheese burrito back in Illinois, where we had to go for there. So, but usually it was more so used for, we're on a road trip and it's like, oh, hey, there's a Taco Bell if we take this exit that has a chili cheese burrito, so let's take it. That's like, and we would, maybe reroute a little bit.
Thanks, technology.
But I mean, I'm on a strict diet, so like I haven't been to Taco Bell in a long time. But if not that, I will always get a quesadilla with extra quesadilla sauce, as Matthew Heavey, aka Doofin, will also always order first.
Once he turned me on to that, I've never not done it as well. Gosh, we're just 3 people who deserve to be large.
Yeah. I'm trying so hard.
Becky's like disgusted by us. I could have done 15 food questions.
Oh God, you don't know me well enough.
No, I know you eat a lot. You just don't show it the way we do.
Anytime Taco Bell comes out with a new food monstrosity, I'm like, let's get a party, go to Taco Bell and try this thing.
So you've had that triple chalupa.
I love Taco Bell's ability to continue to create new items with basically 7 different things. And they keep creating new things out of those 7 things. Like, how many things can you put beef or chicken or cheese on? It's insane.
Yeah, exactly. Doritos tacos, like the Dorito shell tacos, and they had the audacity and the bravery to do Cool Ranch flavor. I mean, that is just...
They have the fiery now, too. You can get 3 different versions.
Oh, my gosh.
You can also get those made into a Gordita Crunch. So you can get the cheesy gordita crunch and get it made. So keep in mind, one of the real subtleties of great Taco Bell ordering is that you can customize Taco Bell however you want. And if you were to go to their website, you can also look at how certain add-ons are cheaper. So if you look at this one burrito that's like $3, you can start with other base burritos that are $1, and you can continue adding items and save money and come up with the right ways to customize it. This is how sad this is.
And this podcast brought to you by Taco Bell.
I love that I added this question.
I also love that this started so professionally, and now it's just devolved into this.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say Taco Bell is a big reason why I got as overweight as I was. Like a really big reason. I mean, it was such something I went to constantly. I love Taco Bell. I would sneak around to go to Taco Bell. It was like a horrible thing. So, but I had to cut that out of my life. That was tough. But thankfully, I've done that. But I know far too much about the ways in which to customize your Taco Bell orders. I mean, I'm not kidding, there's a podcast on it. So
nice. Becky's favorite creatures of film and television, the Muppets. Who is your favorite Muppet?
I like Miss Piggy. She doesn't take no shit from nobody. I like her.
Miss Piggy's not my favorite, but I will say I love the scene of Miss Piggy and Joan Rivers where they're like going crazy at the makeup counter and just like going nuts when she's upset because Kermit doesn't like her. That's one of my favorite moments of a Muppet movie. Also, any Muppet movie where Kermit is riding a bike, I laugh uncontrollably.
Oh, yes.
It's so funny to me. But it's Statler and Waldorf, hands down. They're just, sitting on the balcony making fun of everything. I mean, that is pretty much my life. So I totally get that in every way. And just the little puns that they make and their laugh at the end are perfect. They're the best.
All right. Back to a food related question. Best barbecue in the greater Austin area.
Well, it's Franklin's, but if you cut that out, because that's a whole different animal, I like Terry Black's, which is in downtown Austin, which is very good.
Okay. Cam is like so misinformed. That was a horrible answer.
No.
Franklin's is clearly not the best. First off, the best barbecue is not just in Austin, it's in the world. And it is Black's, but it's not Terry Black's. That's there in downtown Austin.
Well, that's not in Austin.
No, we said greater Austin area. So that was include Lockhart,
yes.
Which I figured you guys would go to.
Black's in Lockhart is right up par with Franklin.
Black's moist brisket, fatty brisket with the, because some people hate the word moist, I get that. But fatty brisket with like the seared ends is, I didn't even know that food could taste like that. I didn't even know that was possible.
The first time we went to that place, it was like a religious experience.
Yeah, we take people, every time people come to Austin, that's where we take them. We go to Black's and Lockhart and I was not a huge barbecue fan because to me, barbecue was like Sonny's or, all this normal stuff. It was fine. Like barbecue was fine. And then I came to Austin and everything changed. And since then, I'll go to like these best, like, oh, what's a great, because I feel like I really like barbecue now. But then I go to all these other cities, including Memphis, including everywhere else. And I'm like, no, that's not the same. Like,
I can't get into like Carolina barbecue and places like that. It's just not.
No. Black's barbecue in Lockhart specifically. Now, what's in downtown Austin is also good, but the Lockhart that's there, you'll have to wait on the weekends. And don't get me wrong, Franklin's is great too. Franklin's is good, but it's not as good as 3 different places in Lockhart alone, which is a town that's about 30 minutes south of Austin.
They're correct, Becky.
It was good when I was there. I liked it, but I haven't been to the Lockhart location, so now I need to.
Yeah, it's a religious experience. You have to come.
No, seriously, like when you come, let us know. We will take you. It is an amazing, and you just play it like don't eat a really late meal in the day. Don't eat breakfast or anything, so you can just have this one giant meal.
And don't plan on doing anything afterwards because you will get the meat sweats and then pass out.
Yeah, you'll need to sleep. You'll need to take.
Don't worry. I'm a professional eater. I got this.
Sorry about what this podcast has become.
Yeah, I feel disgusting now. Like I'm really trying to.
You did
like,
this, Sean.
better. I'm really
you
trying.
guys spent 20 minutes on Taco Bell. I didn't know it was going to happen. I thought somebody would say like volcano taco and move on.
Oh come on!
Oh, I love volcano taco.
Oh, I miss the volcano taco so much.
Oh man, see what you
the
did.
Volcano taco sauce, by the way, originally was called the 4-alarm fire sauce, and it's the same sauce. So if you get the spicy ranch now, that's the closest version of what the 4-alarm, aka the volcano sauce was. But it's tricky. You can mix the red sauce with it too, and that helps. I know too much about this.
I was going to say, are we going to find out that you host that podcast you were talking about?
I was going to say, you know way more than even I thought you
Aaron's
knew.
like the producer and the writer of the podcast.
It's sad, man. Like
he has an alias, Joe Taco Bell, that he does all these podcasts under.
This is so, like, I'm disgusted at myself just thinking about how much I really know. Because I hadn't thought about that in forever. And then you say that, I'm like, ugh.
I'm thinking of Idiocracy with the brought to you by Taco Bell and Joe Camacho.
Hey, they play ball. They did the promos for Demolition Man 2. We should make them the sponsor of a movie.
Oh, that's right, yeah, because it's the only one that rightfully survived in Demolition Man.
The Fast Food Wars. Cam, what would be your walk-on music?
You're Beautiful by, what was Daniel Blunt? What's his name? Daniel Blunt?
James Blunt?
James Blunt.
Your walk-on music.
No, don't edit that out. Edit that out.
I'm not editing that out.
It's just what popped in my head. James Blunt. You're Beautiful. That's what it is. Final answer. I'm sticking with it.
That's your answer for your walkout music.
Yes.
I can't even. So
that is what popped into my head immediately when he asked that question.
I actually, sadly, I grew up in a very religious home, and I used to work at it's House of Pain's Jump Around. So House of Pain's Jump Around would be my walk-on music, because it actually was my walk-on music for a youth group that I used to work with. I'm an atheist now, but at the time I grew up as a Christian home, and I had to work with the youth group, and I helped them do their games.
I hope you got the edited version of that song, because there's cursing all over that song.
They didn't care. Nah, I did you just do the whole open, that dun, 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 and then it picks up. It's so great to come out to. Like, it's the perfect come out to music. So yeah, House of Pain's Jump Around for sure.
Nice. All right. I guess I got all the food questions. I'm so sorry now. What's the first restaurant you're going to sit down and eat at once you can go back and do so after quarantine has lifted?
I mean, the first restaurant I'll probably end up going to, thanks to my girlfriend, is probably Texas Roadhouse. But the place that I would like to go most, so many answers.
Yeah, this is awful. Like, Cam's answer is going to be like McDonald's. This is a guy who he orders from Uber Eats from McDonald's. So I don't even know.
No, but I don't eat in McDonald's. I have not cut that out of my life. It's probably going to be some wing place. I love chicken wings. I don't know which one. Not sure which one, but one of those. A wing place.
God, I mean, mine would be, there's a couple different sushi places that I would go to. So I've ordered sushi a couple times. It's weird. I used to love Uchiko would probably be the quickest answer, I guess I would say. But I didn't actually always love Uchiko. I actually liked a lot of the cheaper sushi for the longest time. But then I went there a couple times in the last year and just kind of realized how wrong I was about how good really great sushi could be. And Uchiko is phenomenal sushi. So I'm actually very eager to go there.
There's also a Sushi Bang Bang by my house that does all-you-can-eat sushi that I would love to go to.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. A place that has all-you-can-eat sushi is not what I'm talking about at all.
That's what I'm talking about. Why is every question about food, by the way? What are you getting at here?
I'm sorry, I did add a couple extras this time around. That one was more about being in Austin. You guys had an Austin question, and then Taco Bell, because I know you both way too well.
Yeah, this is making it hard. I'm getting so hungry right now going through this. I have not.
Cam, can you get meat sweats without having the meat in you? Because I think Aaron just got the meat sweats.
Yeah, he got the pre-meat sweats.
So gross.
This might be our longest episode, and we spent half of it talking about food.
This all started to go off the rails at Friday the 13th. That's when it went from Rapid Fire 15 to not Rapid Fire 15.
This episode's title will be "We Talk About Scare Package."
Oh my God, I love it.
I hate it.
I love puns.
That's actually that's Sam's shirt. Is I want a taco about Jesus, and then with a taco, and then it says "Let us pray." So yeah, that's in Scare Package. So
it's relevant.
Yeah, it is relevant. See?
Well, that was the end of the official questionnaire part of it, but you guys didn't disappoint, or you fully disappointed, depending on which way you're
I'm
looking at.
disappointed in myself, so I kind of think I'm disappointed.
All right,
I'm just going to go work out or something. I feel like I'm so...
like editing this episode.
So should we bring it back to the topic at hand and rein it back into Scare Package, Paper Street, and what's coming up next? What's going on that you can talk about? What should people be keeping an eye out for? Obviously, the Pale Door. Is there anything else?
Aaron dropped a few hints.
Yeah, we're writing. So Cam and I have been writing a lot and developing a couple different ideas. And so we wanted to take advantage of this time. So we've got a number of features actually that are kind of under our belt. And then we're producing some projects for a couple other folks. One that we were hoping to go into production until the pandemic hit. So we had to delay that. But then there's at least 2 projects that were pretty close to happening that we would hope would happen the end of this year or early next year. And then, like I said, we're also really trying to get Emily Higgins' feature off the ground as well, because she's a superstar and needs that to happen. So we're going to make it happen.
We are staying busy, that is for sure.
I always say we're really lucky. I keep telling people that because I feel really lucky that we're as busy as we are. Because even though people think like, oh, your movies are done, they're coming out, like the job's over. It's not even close to that. Like you are constantly doing so many little things for the soundtrack or marketing. I mean, right now we're creating all these marketing materials for Scare Package. Because again, we tried to figure out what the cost of those would be. It was too expensive to hire a company to do them. So we're creating them all. I literally pulled an all-nighter last night editing part of our EPK and special features that are going to go on the Pale Door DVD and Blu-ray. So, all these things, we're constantly working on all this stuff and just coming up with that. But there'll be some fun Scare Package surprises upcoming in the next week or two, including we're creating some promotional materials that, look, we were able to get Jeremy King, who plays Rad Chad, and a green screen, and then remotely direct him to create some fun stuff. So there's a number of fun things that are coming to help promote the movie that we're doing as well. So
Rad. We'll keep an eye out for those.
Rad Chad even.
And then the last part, I guess, where do you want to direct people if they want to interact with you online?
This is the Paper Street Podcast, and you can go to Paper Street Pictures, and you can see stuff, and you can find me on all the things. Aaron B. Koontz, you look me up, you'll find me everywhere. It's easy to find. And we try to respond to most folks that get to us as well. But, you can send us, if you have projects or things that you're thinking about, you can send those to us. Just don't send us the scripts right now. Just kind of pitch what you're looking at. And we're always looking at scripts. We're always checking things out. So that's a welcome opportunity as well. But and then you can say hi. I think we notice, like I said, I go through Twitter and I'm reading, the Scare Package quotes and what people are saying, and they matter. And they mean a lot because right now we don't know what that reaction is going to be. We're not seeing those reactions in a crowd. The Pale Door, we're not going to be able to see in front of a crowd. We might do some drive-ins. We might do some things that we're working on with some small theatrical, whatever that means in current times. But other than that, we're dependent on social media and hearing what people say. So we seek that out, and we're hoping that people have good experiences and talk about it, and because it goes a long way.
Yeah, if you want to follow us, on Twitter, it's at Paper ST Pictures. If you want to follow Scare Package, you should. It's at Scare Package. And if you want to follow me personally, it's at Cammo, CAMMO 101. And I'm not on Instagram, so if you want to follow me there, you're out of luck.
Because Cameron's still stuck in 2012 in so many ways. Camo 101.
I haven't taken a picture since 2013.
How come you guys didn't share your Snapchats and TikToks then?
Those are just for me. Those are private.
So we are going to create a TikTok with Rad Chad. So
cool.
We're going to do a TikTok Rad Chad, and he's going to do his own review thing that we're talking about doing as well. So Rad Chad reviews.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for imparting all the wisdom and the processes of how Scare Package came together. I think it'll be useful to some folks who are trying to jump in. And I think the key takeaways might be, insane organization. You guys mentioned the Excel documents, and they're not kidding. There are many. And the networking and the outreach, whether it's social media, whether it's chatting people up at festivals, whatever you can do, it all helps.
Yeah, just be a cool person, and listen to others. And, right now is a great time to do that. Listen to what's happening in the world and reacting to that. And don't just I totally get the need to escape into movies, and we really hope that Scare Package is one of those. But when you come back, still watch the news right now. Like, listen to what's happening, understand the plight of what other folks are going through, and see how you can, in any small little way you can, enact change, and call out the people that are not advocates, and ask for folks to change their minds. And I think that can go a long way. And then you get to have some fun later and watch movies. And that's what Scare Package is about. And we hope people end up having those moments in June, or is June, but later in June.
Later in June. And thanks for having us, Sean and Becky. You two do an awesome job, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to debate Friday the 13th sequels, I'm here.
We need a one-off with you guys just arguing about Friday the 13th movies.
That would probably be a 5-hour episode at least.
I don't think we would argue that much. I think there's just the one contentious point that we have. But then other than that, I think we could have a very interesting Friday the 13th. I mean, look, there's so many people who talk about Friday the 13th, so that's a very much a fan service thing. But I mean, I watch them every single year, and so it's a thing.
I was so sure you were going to ask what my favorite anthology segment in a movie is that I prepped for it, and then you didn't ask it.
Oh.
Aaron answered that ahead of time. That's why.
He did. Well,
he was mentioning ones he really loved.
Well, Safe Haven is definitely my favorite, but I was prepped and ready for that one.
You could have chimed in when Aaron mentioned Safe Haven.
Well, I did. I said that's my favorite too, but that was back when we were still trying to keep this thing streamlined.
Speaking of trying to keep it streamlined, I'm going to mute you, and we're going to say goodbye to you.
Alrighty.
Deal.
Trying to move on. Cameron's like, but guys, you didn't ask me that one thing I wrote down as a note that I could have interjected when Aaron said the word.
We were
Safe
off
Haven.
already. Are we still?
No, sir. Well, we're about to now.
Cut all this.
No, we kid. We love you, kid. All right, guys, go get some Taco Bell. Enjoy yourselves.
No, I'm not getting Taco Bell.
Oh wait, sorry. That was the other lesson of this episode.
Go work out.
I'm gonna make salmon.
Right.
That's what I'm doing.
All right. Later, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.